Cześć! Już za chwilę zobaczycie drugą część mojej rozmowy z Dave'em Getzem, czyli perkusistą, znanym przede wszystkim ze współpracy z zespołem Big Brother and the Holding Company, w którym w latach 60. śpiewała Janis Joplin. W tej części Dave opowiedział mi m.in. o działalności zespołu Big Brother and the Holding Company od momentu jego reaktywacji w 1987 do czasów obecnych, o swoich solowych dokonaniach, tendencji do idealizowania nagrań słynnych muzyków z lat 60. Zachęcam Was do subskrybowania, lajkowania, wspierania mojego kanału Vintage Music Geek na YouTubie. A tymczasem przed Wami druga część mojej rozmowy z Dave'em Getzem. Miłego oglądania. You mentioned, you play with a lot of musicians in Big Brother also after Janis. I mean, there was a lot of singers on this band. For example, there was singers like Carty Richardson, Darby Gold. Darby Gold, am I spelling right the
She's
surname?
recent, yeah.
Yeah, they both sang on Jefferson Starship. So you also, I can say, one big music family, yeah, because Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, and Big Brother and Holding Company, all from the San Francisco area. The singers maybe play later, yeah, on this band. But anyway, you also change musicians between the bands, yeah, between the famous bands.
Let me tell you something. So, just to clarify something. So, from about 1979 through 1987, for about 17 years, I didn't play music.
Yeah.
I went back to being an artist, and I became a printmaker. And I lived in Los Angeles, and I was very active, and I showed my work in galleries, and I was a printmaker, mostly an artist. And I still had a set of drums, and sometimes I would jam with people, but I didn't play professionally. I didn't do any gigs or anything like that. In 1987, I moved back from Los Angeles to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I came back, and Big Brother got back together again in 1987. And when we got back together, it was a very different than it was 25 years before in 1970, because instead of saying, let's do something different, it was more like, let's do cheap thrills. We decided completely the opposite of what I said before. What I was explaining about Big Brother in 1970, 1971 and 72 was we had this conscious desire not to do Janis. Don't do Janis. Don't do any Janis songs. No cheap thrills. Just all new stuff. When we got back together in 87, we said, okay, if we want to be performing now as Big Brother, we have to do cheap thrills. We have to get a singer. We have to get a female singer that can do this music with authority, that someone who not imitates Janis, but someone who's good enough to sing the Janis material so we can do it now again and do it good and make it sound good and believable. So that was a much different concept, a much different idea than we were all older now. We were all in our 40s, and we wanted to sort of like go back now to the cheap thrills and the Janis material and do it. And because it was also the beginning of where people started to see this idea of classic rock. This idea of classic rock came into existence. And people said there was started to be all kinds of bands that did classic rock. And so we joined that. We basically accepted that if we were going to call ourselves Big Brother and the Holding Company, we would have to do that music.
Mm-hmm.
And we were willing to do it. I was willing to do it because I think that I wanted to make money again. I wanted to be able to go out on the road again and play for people and work as a band. And I knew that if we wanted to work as a band, we would have to do that music. We would have to find a female singer that could sing that music. So it was a whole different acceptance of that fact. It was like, that's kind of maturity. And at the same time, it's like you accept the idea that you don't want to be like a cover band. You don't want to try to imitate and duplicate exactly note for note what you did in the 60s, but you accept the fact that we created this music with Janis, but we created a lot of it. We created these arrangements. We created this sound. So let's accept that and go out and do it again and play like that. And that's what we do now. And all of the singers that we've had since then, we've had probably 30 different singers. Mm-hmm. Darby Gould, you mentioned. I could name 10 of them up. We've had some wonderful singers. We've had some singers that are not so wonderful. But Darby Gould, Kathy Richardson, Sophia Ramos, Mary Bridget Davis, Casey Clanton. There's about 5 or 6 more that were really great singers. Kathy McDonald, that have sung with us since 1987. It's already like, a lot of years that we've been doing that. And that's what we do now. When we go out, we do some new material. But we have to do Summertime. We have to do Piece of My Heart. We have to do Bobby McGee, which we didn't even do, which wasn't even a Big Brother song. But people insist that we have to do Bobby McGee. So we accept that. We say, okay, we'll do Bobby McGee. We didn't do Bobby McGee, but we'll do it. And we'll do our version of Bobby McGee. And we'll do Down on Me. And we'll do all of the Janis, the material that we did with Janis. And then we'll throw in some new things and stuff like that. But the people that come to hear us now, they have to hear those things. It's like classic rock. It's like, it's like, that's what it is. And that's the life of a musician. You just want to basically be able to play and make a living and go out and play and play music that's fun to play, that's enjoyable to play. And some of it you have to accept that you have to sort of satisfy the audience, what the audience wants. You have to give them what they want. You can't just make up new stuff all the time and expect the audience to sing.
But anyway, you are still active as a band, yeah? You still record, you still performing, recording, Big Brother, or how it is like? What is this?
Not recording, but still performing.
Mm-hmm.
I think though it's getting less and less because I'm getting older and Peter's getting older, and we're probably, realistically speaking, I think we're in the last couple of years of being able to do it. It's very unusual because when rock and roll began in the 50s, the 1950s, it was music for teenagers. It was all young people. There were no old people doing rock and roll. The oldest people were maybe like Chuck Berry, who was maybe like, 36, or he was probably not even 40 maybe, but maybe he was 40. But everybody else was young, all in their early 20s. I was 26 when I joined Big Brother, and I was one of the older guys. Everybody was like 21 and 22 years old. And now there's a lot of like old guys playing rock and roll, like the Rolling Stones are all in their 80s, and Paul McCartney's in his 80s, and Ringo Starr is out there with his band, and Ringo Starr is the same age as me. Ringo Starr is 86 this year, 86, and he's still out there doing it. And it's far out. No one expected that. No one ever thought, and some people think it's ridiculous. Some people say, oh, old people shouldn't be playing rock and roll. It looks ridiculous, but here we are, we're doing it,
Yeah, I think there is no problem with it. I mean, the people will go for the legends here to see it's maybe big word, but anyway, it is like that. You are also mentioned as a legend because you play with legendary, and you are a legend drummer, yeah, with the legendary
Well,
band.
that's, you know, we're one of the words you hear around a lot. Legend. Is
Yeah,
a
exactly.
legendary. You hear that
Yeah,
word
but
a
that's what
lot.
people
It's used.
stick in mind, yeah, because they go to this concert to
Exactly.
see. Yeah,
That's part of the myth of it. The mythology of rock
yeah,
and roll is that
yeah,
these legendary people, that
yeah,
we created something that changed the world. That was a time of the 60s when the music really had some important effect on society and the politics and the whole culture. It was a whole
mhm,
cultural change that the music was very much a part of. So all of these people now are legendary, you know,
yeah.
the Rolling Stones and some people, and they are, you know. I mean, I would still go to see Paul McCartney anytime. I would still go to see Bob Dylan anytime I could,
Mhm.
if I get a ticket, you know.
You know, I
And what they did still holds up. It still
mm,
holds up as
mm,
art over time.
mm. You also record new album lately. It comes anthems, themes, and little stories. Yeah,
Yes,
last year I listened to it, and it's very jazzy. There is a lot of jazz, rock, fusion, big band
yeah,
also, big band stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
I think the person that recorded with you is Tom Finch. Yeah, he also
Tom Finch,
supports.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Can you say something more about this album and yeah, how it was created and generally what comes to
Well,
your
here's a
mind when?
copy of it. I'm
Yeah.
holding it up. This
Hmm.
is my album. So over the years, I play piano. I'm not a great pianist, but mostly I've sort of like learned to play the things that I compose.
Hmm.
And I've composed a lot of pieces on the piano. And a lot of it comes out not, I don't know, a lot of it is not rock and roll. It comes out of me. A lot of it is just other kinds of music. And over the years, I'm very eclectic in my musical tastes. Before I was listening to rock and roll, before I became a rock and roll drummer, I mostly listened to jazz.
Hmm.
I started out when I was young, 12, 13, 14, listening to a lot of rhythm and blues. And then from rhythm and blues, I moved to jazz. I listened to West Coast jazz, and then I listened to bebop jazz, and then I listened to post bebop jazz. Then I started listening to a lot of rock music. Then I started listening to a lot of all during that time folk music and different kinds of folk music and ethnic music. And I listened to African music and I listened to Indian music and I've listened to Eastern European music and Bulgarian vocal music. And I've listened to all kinds of music. I've listened to modern music. I listen to opera. I love opera. So I love so my musical taste and um, my ears are not just like I don't, just two or three things. I listen to a lot of stuff. So when I play the piano and I compose things, a lot of different things come in. So that's what this album is. It's very eclectic, I think. There's a few things on it that could maybe be called jazz. There's a few things on it that could maybe be called rock. And
Hmm.
then there's other things on it that don't have specific categories. I don't, it's hard to name them. They're just like music. They're just like
Yeah.
contemporary compositions.
Hmm.
Someone nominated my album for a Grammy, which was a wonderful thing. So I didn't make it to the final stage, but it was nominated, and it was nominated as Best Contemporary Instrumental Album. So
Hmm.
that's what they call it. They don't say jazz. They don't say best rock or rhythm and blues. It's just contemporary instrumental, which is a
Hmm.
broad category that
Yeah.
encompasses a lot of different possibilities. And that's kind of what it is. And I think it will hold up. I think that the music in it is well done, and I think it's interesting music.
Hmm.
And the people who I think have big ears get it.
Hmm.
The response I've gotten from people who I respect, who have what I call, big ears, um, they get it and they love it. They've said great things about it. But
Yeah.
I don't expect it to become, you know, high on the Billboard charts, top, you know, selling a. That's not going to happen. I know that, but I had to do it. I put out an album also about 15 years ago. I made a CD, and the impetus for that album to do that, the motivation to do that album was that I had a song that I had written with Janis that never got recorded, and it was called "Can't Be the Only One," was the title song, and she had written lyrics for something that a riff, a blues riff that I had written, and that she really liked it. And before she quit Big Brother, she wrote these words for it, and the words sat around in a box in my house for like 40 years. And one day I took it out and I said, I'm going to just try to record this and create a melody for it. So that was the motivation. And I did this album. And I did also a lot of other compositions in it that were sort of a lot like this new album. There were other sort of interesting compositions. But that was the motivation for that album. The motivation for this album was just the fact that for the last 15, 20 years, I've been sitting at the piano composing these pieces, and other musicians have, you know, said things that, you know, they'd like to record them, or they'd like to play on that, or they'd like to sort of, you know, do something with it. So it finally got me into the studio, and I said, you know, just for my own feeling of satisfaction, I feel like I have to record this stuff. And Tom Finch, who I've worked with now since we've been working together for 25 years. In fact, we at one point we put together a band and played these compositions. About 3 years ago, we formed a band called Noisy Children, and Noisy Children mostly was mostly my compositions that are on this album, but also some of Tom's compositions, and it's also some jazz things that he's been playing, some John Scofield stuff, things like that. So we had this band, Noisy Children, and Noisy Children, again, was so unique as a band that there was very few places that we could play, clubs that we could play. So that sort of fell apart. And then Tom and I decided to go into the studio and just record this stuff and make an album out of it. So that's it.
That sounds great. I mean, one song that sticks to my mind especially, it calls Bad Montuno. And the feeling, yeah, and the song, when I hear it, I think about Carlos Santana. I don't know why, because this Latin, this guitar playing also, just it makes me think about Carlos Santana. I don't know why.
Yeah. You know, there was a musician who passed away a few years ago. His name was Bruce Langhorne, and he was a guitarist, and he also he played many instruments. He played saxophone, he played guitar, he played drums, he played a lot of instruments. But he was mostly famous because he played on the first Bob Dylan records. The early Bob Dylan records. He was one of the musicians on those records. And that was something that made him. Bruce Langhorne played a thing on the piano that was the riff that I used on Bad Montuno. I copied that riff from Bruce Langhorne, and then I wrote another part to it, a top part, and then we filled out other parts. But that was the thing we started with. And I worked with Bruce during the mid-70s, early 70s. I played for a while with a group. I was back on the East Coast, and it was an organization, a spiritual organization called Arika. That was thing that sort of it was called a spiritual school, a mystical school, so a spiritual pursuit. But a lot of people who were in it were musicians, and Bruce was in it, and a guy named Al Shackman, who was Nina Simone's musical director, was in it, and a few other people. And we formed a musical group within that school, within this mystical spiritual school, and we made music for that. And so I became good friends with Bruce Langhorne. And then I went from, I moved from living on the East Coast in New York State. I moved to Los Angeles. And I moved to Los Angeles partly because Bruce was a friend of mine in Los Angeles. And he was doing film scores at that time in Los Angeles. And he was, but I say he was well known because he worked with Bob Dylan and he had worked with a lot of the early folk musicians on those early records. And then he did the score for a lot of the movies of Peter Fonda he worked for, and he was doing a lot of film scoring. And I went to Los Angeles with the intention that I would work with Bruce. And over that time, we hung out a lot together, and he would play piano. And he played one day this Latin riff on the piano. I said, "What's that? Show me that." And he showed it to me, and I copied it. And then 50 years later, it became Bad Montuno. On that track, I played conga drums, I played timbalitos, I played a lot of Latin percussion, which I don't get a chance to do that much.
Joel Hoekstra, this guitar player who also played with Big Brother, I think, some time ago. Do you remember? Joel Hoekstra. Joel Hoekstra, guitar player who also played with Whitesnake band.
Joel Hoekstra.
Joel Hoekstra. Yeah, exactly.
It's Joel Hoekstra.
Exactly. Joel Hoekstra. Yeah.
Hoekstra. Yeah. Joel Hoekstra. He's a great guitar player. Maybe the best guitar player that ever played with Big Brother and the Holding Company. Fantastic guitar player. Just a great player. And I have a lot of recordings with Joel. He played with Whitesnake. He played with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He played with, I think he's the lead guitarist for Cher.
Yes.
I think he plays with Cher. A lot of people. He's just a fantastic player. And for a while, he was playing with Big Brother. And we went to Thailand. We did a tour of Thailand. And Joel came with us. Joel was our lead guitar player on that tour. And I have a lot of recordings of him playing with Big Brother that are just phenomenal. Just guitar playing.
Yeah, I also talked with him some time ago, and he also mentioned playing with you. Eddie Money, this singer, was also supposed to sing in the Big Brother.
Yeah.
Is it true?
When I told you the story about how when Peter and I quit Country Joe and the Fish in 1969, we came back to San Francisco and we started auditioning. We had a rehearsal place, a big warehouse that we rehearsed in, and we auditioned different singers. And Eddie Money was one of the people who came and auditioned for us.
But he hadn't fit, I guess, to the band.
I wish we had. I wish we had selected him, but I didn't. I think at the time we were looking for a woman.
I talked also with Harvey Brooks, and he also told me about some jam sessions. Yeah, he also have jam session, of course, with Jimi Hendrix. He known him very well. Right. Also with Jim Morrison, and of course with Janis Joplin. And he's told me that Janis wasn't in a good shape anyway. So some of this jam session was quite good and she was in phenomenal condition, but some of them was terrible because of her. Acting, she was under influence. Yeah, exactly.
She was probably stoned. I don't know why.
It was the same in Big Brother, yeah?
Not really. Janis in Big Brother, I always remember her being just always very capable.
Okay.
She was always somebody you could depend upon. Even if she was high, she could do it, But the two guitar players, Sam and James, were up and down. Sometimes they couldn't play at all. Particularly James Gurley. James Gurley would fall off. He had one time when he almost fell off the stage. It was really, a mess.
Yeah. But I think that there was, as Harvey also told me, there was this community of your bands, many bands, of course, Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Big Brother, of course, Quicksilver.
Yeah.
And you
There
also
was.
gathered sometimes together and jam, do the jamming. Do you remember
Yeah,
such things?
yes and no. Yes, there was a community. There was a sense of community of the bands in San Francisco from 1966 through 1968.
Yeah.
For a couple of years, really communal kind of thing, and people hang out together and sometimes jam together. I can remember one time when Big Brother was playing, and Jerry Garcia came up on stage and played with us, and things like that. And times like that. There was one time when the Grateful Dead had a rehearsal studio in a town called San Rafael, where I live, and I went over to the rehearsal studio, and I think Phil was there, and Bobby, and I don't remember who else, but we jammed for a while. I jammed with Phil and some other people for a while at their studio, and I jammed with Jerry. I played with Jerry maybe a couple of times in his house. There was one time when I went over, Jerry was living not far from me, in a house in a place called Madrone Canyon. And I went over to his house, and he was watching TV and practicing, and I got a drum pad, and I set the drum pad up, and we were just playing. I was playing on the drum pad, and he was playing guitar, and we were both watching television, and, stuff like that.
That's funny.
That didn't last. There was only a period of time when we could do stuff like that.
Okay. There was a band, Mickey and the Heartbeats. Do you remember?
Yeah, that was one. That was something. There was a time when during that, again, the late 60s, when Peter and I were trying to put Big Brother together again, where we did a jam at a club called the Matrix with Mickey and a bunch of people all came down, and it was a mess. It was not terrible, and people have recordings of it, and they say, "Oh wow, this great jam or Mickey and the Heartbeats," and I listened to it. It's awful. It's horrible. It's just a mess. But people, they think
for
it's
some
something.
people, this is holy grail, because they have gathered all these famous musicians in one room.
That's one of the problems. That's one of the problems. Can I call you Mike?
Yes, of course.
One of the problems with the legendary thing is a lot of the audience for 60s music and the people who sort of love 60s music, they just listen to anything and they think it's great. And sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it's really some of these jam sessions, some of these Grateful Dead recordings, these live Grateful Dead recordings, some of them are really bad. They're just not good music. They're not good playing, but people value them because of the myth and the legend and the kind of all of that, the status that they attach to the people. That they say, "Oh, Mickey Hart's playing on this, and Jerry Garcia's playing on it." And if you listen to the music objectively, if you didn't know that those people were on it, and you just thought didn't know any of the names of the musicians, you'd say, "Oh, this is awful. This is terrible." But then if it's Jerry Garcia or something, oh, it's like it's important, or some kind of other thing. You change your opinion. I don't change my opinion. My ears hear what's there, and I don't care who's playing. If it's terrible, it's terrible. And even myself, I've played on a lot of recordings where I can't listen to it. I say, my drumming is bad, or it's off on that one. I don't care. I'm just trying to be objective, musically objective. I think that's important.